Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to MyGolfDNA, where we help you get better at the game of golf by giving you a whole bunch of information as to what you're doing, why you're doing it, and most importantly, how you're going to get the job done. Now, I know a lot of us struggle getting ourselves warmed up for a round of golf, or some of us just find ourselves on the golf course on the struggle bus, period. And our ball striking is one of those things that eludes us, and we just start losing sight of how to hit the center of the club face. Today, I'm going to show you a great drill that every one of you are capable of being able to work on in the comforts of your own home or out here on the driving range. That's going to help you do two of the most important things you need to do when it comes to swinging the golf club. And that is sequencing your downswing and leaning the shaft forward. Now, when you hear me use the term shaft lean is one of those things that we have to have in the golf swing, but it's not something that we force to happen. We don't want to take the club from the top of the swing and start forcing the handle in front of the club head. That is going to get you into big time trouble. It's going to make it very hard for you to actually let the club release. And I want you to understand that the three main factors that put you into a position where you will see forward shaft lean at the point of contact are, number one, in your downswing, your center of mass is going to move in front of the golf ball before the point of contact. Why do we do that? Well, because I want you to understand that your lead shoulder is your primary pivot point in the golf swing. It's the determining factor where the low point in the swing shape is going to be. We know that in golf, the optimal way of thinking about low point is it's going to be somewhere between 3 to 5 inches in front of the golf ball. That's not ironclad across the board for every single one of your clubs in your bag. It's very player dependent. So the first factor is making sure your center of mass is in front of the golf ball. The second factor is making sure that you use your legs and your hips to pull your torso around into the release. Your hips are going to be rotating from about 45 degrees closed to 45 degrees open, which is in turn pulling your shoulders around into the hitting area. So you have moving your center of mass in front of the golf ball, and you also have your hips continuing to rotate open somewhere between 35 to 45 degrees. And then the third and final component really ties hands with what your lead wrist is going to be doing. Now, if you look at me at address, most of you, depending on your grip, are going to see a little bit of what we call cupping or extension in the lead wrist. In the golf swing, at the point of contact, my wrist is going to change from that little bit of cupping, and it's going to work to an anatomically flat position. In some cases, it'll be even slightly bowed. That happens outside of the hitting area. That's what's allowing you to deal off the club. Now, before I start teaching you how I do this drill, I want to use a little analogy here with you guys today, because I like to give you kind of a visual of how I like to do things here. Is that I think about our wrists in the golf swing as being kind of the most important piece of your puzzle because they're managing the club face. But I want you to think of your wrists as being pilots. Your left wrist is your pilot. Your right wrist is your co-pilot. Both of your pilots are capable of being able to fly this airplane in high stress environments. But when it gets down to the nitty gritty here, you want the guy that's got the most experience controlling things. So you want your lead wrist working to square the club face and to deal off the club. You want your co-pilot to be the one that's adding stability to the release. That's what this drill is going to teach you how to do. Now, this drill is going to be done in isolation at first to get you to feel the center of mass moving and to get your hips opening up and to get your lead arm and lead wrist trained to work from one side of the body to the other perfectly. Now, how I want you to do this is grab a golf club, like a 7-iron and 8-iron, and grab a glove and put it on, or a watch. And what we're going to do here is we're going to set the club off to the side. I'm going to put my trail hand behind my back, and I'm just going to go ahead and swing my left arm outside my body. So I'm going to turn my body back just ever so slightly, and I'm going to make sure that my wrist is anatomically flat and pointed directly in front of me. It could be slightly bowed, which would have my knuckles, if you were looking at me from a down the line perspective, it's going to have my knuckles slightly back in behind my wrist bones. Now from here, what we're going to do is we're going to work on the sequence. And we're going to have a ball position down where we would have it in our normal setup off of our logo on our chest. And we're going to first move our belt buckle in front of the golf ball. And we're going to open our hips up, and then we're going to go ahead and swing the arm over to the other side. Now, if you look at my lead arm, it's completely extended out away from my body, and my lead wrist is pointed where? Well, it's pointed directly behind me. So my lead arm and lead wrist went from here, pointed out in front of me, anatomically flat or slightly bowed, and it moved to the other side of my body and rotated to where it's pointed behind me. Now, a lot of you at home get scared of that word supination. Supination is rotation of the wrist in the forearm. It's a real thing, and this is a movement that will work with grip patterns that are tied to a neutral grip. So if you look down at your left hand at address and you see that your V is pointed up towards your right ear, or it's pointed in the direction of your left ear towards a little bit of a weaker grip, then this drill is going to work perfectly for you. If you have a stronger grip, then when you start to let your arm swing through to the other side, it's not going to rotate nearly as much. So you can still use this as you go forward in the process. I just want you to understand that. So I want you to do a good number of reps here where you get comfortable with moving in sequence. So center of mass is going to move in front of the golf ball. Hips are going to open up. Arm is going to swing through. And you want to be able to get to the point where you can do this in fluidity. Okay? Simple little movement on a little small swing. Make sure your legs and your hips get there first. And then once you start to do this, where you can do it pretty fluidly without a lot of tension in your arm or your shoulder, and you're checking these positions to make sure that they're right, now you're ready to start bringing the golf club back into the mix. But when you bring the golf club back into the mix, I want you to flip the club over because I want you to take the momentum and inertia out of it so that you focus on these movements being done 100% accurately. So we're gonna go ahead and take our setup. Little small swing back. My left wrist is flat. I'm gonna move in sequence. My left wrist is flat and pointed directly behind me. Do this for another 10 to 15 reps. Stay very connected to it. So it's belt buckle, hips, left wrist. Now, here's the fun part. We're gonna start adding stability to this. And stability is gonna come from the CoPilot. The CoPilot is gonna move into a position of what we call wrist set, or a little bit of extension. Now, this movement is kind of that middle point between wrist cock and wrist hinge. So you'll hear us call it wrist set or a little bit of wrist extension. We're gonna try to maintain that wrist extension until our hands and arms get past where the low point in the swing would be. So you can see here I've set up 2 golf balls. This first golf ball that's on the ground is a reference point for where I'm gonna be hitting golf balls from. And this second golf ball is about 3 to 5 inches in front of the golf ball. So when we start to do these reps, now what we're gonna do is work in sequence with the club flipped on the right side up. We're gonna make these little small swings, and we're gonna hang on to some tension here in the hands and the arms just to make sure that we can feel like we're maintaining that relationship with the right wrist. So I'm gonna move my hips forward, okay? Now you can see here that my wrist is still trying to maintain extension, and I'm trying to get my wrist to rotate back behind me. And we're gonna do this for another 10 to 15 reps or so. Belt buckle, hips. Okay, so I'm trying to feel that extension stay in that good spot all the way through the low point. So I'm connected to the left wrist, the right wrist, and I'm also connected to the sequence. Once I know that I'm getting to the correct spot over here, now it's our job to start shaking out the tension in the hands and the arms and letting the club start to swing as my hands and arms start to get past the low point. So here's how it's gonna look. So I'm gonna take, swing back, wrist is in a good spot. Okay? Now, if you heard that little brush of the grass, you know that I'm tension-free in my arms, my shoulders, and I'm tension-free in my wrists. So I want to be able to do a few reps like this, back and forth. Okay, maybe a little bit more tense there. I'm still focusing on where my left wrist is trying to get to. Okay, that felt like a good rep. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit a shot. Okay, so I hit a pretty low little draw there. Maybe caught it just a fraction heavy, which maybe means that I was a little bit more tense and not letting the club swing, or maybe my arms got there first. So I'm gonna go ahead and get really focused on the movement here. Okay, a little bit tense. Okay. Okay, really good contact there. Now I've started the process of being able to build some confidence back in my movement because I'm working on getting impact all sorted out. Good sequence, good shaft lean, good control of the club face, all being driven by the legs and the hips and being able to make sure you understand what the wrist should be doing. Once you get connected to that, shake all the tension out of it and make the movement very dynamic and use these little reference points, and you're gonna be amazed on how much easier it is to get yourself back on track without having to go take a 2-hour golf lesson. Make sure you guys when you work on a drill of this nature, if you get good success, do me a big favor and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post that up below. We'll see you guys in the next video. Oh yeah, and hit the like button for us as well. It's good for my psyche.